currently serves on the South Lake Library Board and is a board member for ICRA, an interfaith dialogue organization within the Muslim community. Sister Shiza also serves on the South Lake Carroll ISD District Diversity Council. So, she is also stacked with qualifications along with our other two panelist members. So, we will now begin the questions.
So starting off with our first question, how do I know if my feeling of sadness or depression is a spiritual deficiency or a mental health issue? How do I differentiate between the two?
Unfortunately, we've had a lot of cases of clients telling me that when they go and they complain, let's say to the imam, and they say, I feel depressed. And just like the poem said, a lot of people have made the mistake of saying, you know what, your iman is not strong enough. You need to read more Quran. And I've had clients come back to me crying, saying that I pray, I read my Quran, my iman is really strong. So really, if you find that you have those symptoms that I was talking about, you have, let's say, 5 out of the 8, then it may be clinically depressed. And if not, if you have some of the other symptoms and you find that you are feeling down, then this is definitely a form of sadness and depression. And there are things you can do actively to overcome them, just like what I mentioned. Now, with spiritual, it helps to have that connection with Allah. It definitely helps to pray. And I found that clients, I used to work at the VA hospital where we weren't allowed to talk about anything about God, about religion, about any of that. And I remember how much more challenging it was to help these individuals get out of their depression. Having that link to Allah, having that connection, definitely it definitely speeds up the progress and speeds up the recovery. However, don't ever think that if you're depressed, it's just a sign of weak iman. I think that's a very important distinction. And do you have to like that?
I think one of the biggest things, especially the youth, you guys have to realize, this is probably the toughest stage of your life. I work with teenagers, and there's so many of them wonderfully committed to the faith, but you also have to know there are hormonal changes happening with you. Does anyone know till what age the brain grows? Any guesses? Yes. So can you imagine that you will have happy days, and you will have sad days, and like Sister Hale was saying, if you are persistently having more sad days than happy days, it's time to talk to someone. And faith will always be a resource that will strengthen you. But Allah also says, read and gain knowledge and learn about how to help yourselves. And know that this is a very tough time in your lives. I work with teens, Muslim teens, and I tell them, you have bicultural identity. You operate in a world from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. that has a different set of rules. And then you go home, and from 4 p.m. till 10 p.m., it's a different set of rules. This is hard. So be kind to yourself and know that Allah is watching, Allah is there to support you, but He's also relying on you to use your sensibility and seek help when you need it.
I just want to add to what both our sisters said. I just spoke to the parents tonight, and one of the things I said is that we cannot always write things off and say that it's a spiritual deficiency or it's magic, or a spell from Harry Potter. It's something that we need to address. If you understand the importance of faith is like a floater, and your life is a journey through the ocean. And so, when faith is a bit weak, it's a bit of air out of the floater, which makes it more of an unbearable ride. And the more you work on your faith, the more stronger your floater becomes. But the times don't change. So at that time, in order to check out a new path or take a new route in life, that's where the mental health experts come in. They can tell you, like if there's a plane that's suffering with turbulence, okay, just go up 5,000 or just come down 2,000. Because the pocket that you're traveling through right now is too much turbulence. It's not the fault of the plane. It's not the fault of your pilot. Don't think your pilot doesn't know what he's doing or she's doing. It's just the zone that you're in. Now you have to make better decisions. And the more tools you have at your disposal, the better those decisions could be, inshallah.
Great analysis. Those are good.
Jazakumullah. Quick question. First, I'm going to ask two questions. The first one is Imam Azhar thinks the Dallas Cowboys fans?
So I boycotted the NFL. I'm a Kaepernick believer, but coming to Texas, where one of my friends told me, he's a non-Muslim, he said to me that Dallas is his Mecca, as Mecca is for Muslims, because he loves the Cowboys and flies in from Florida for their games. The Cowboys are interesting, but to be Kaepernick is more important.
I guess that's okay. Now back to the real questions. I once heard a sheikh say at the root of depression is ungratefulness to Allah. Is that a fair statement generally, or is that only for some cases?
So I was in Toronto in November, where we had the Parliament of World Religions, where 10,000 faith leaders across the world came together to discuss, deliberate, address issues, and to learn. I sat in a discussion that was held by the Moroccan government, and how the Moroccan government is training their imams to be imams. And so I asked them, let me get this straight. You have imams in your masjid that you employ and that you pay, and you just figured out that they're not imam enough to be imams, so now you're training them to be better imams? That's a problem. And you're going to tell me we have a problem here in America. I think you guys have a bigger problem in Morocco. So my point was that unfortunately sometimes people may say things. Islam is a faith. Muslim is a follower. Don't take a Muslim to mean Islam. A person may say a statement that may be hurtful. Do not make a definitive decision at that moment to disconnect, disengage. My friend, Sister Catherine from Miami, she called me last Thanksgiving. She was up in Ohio, and the Imam was giving a khutbah. The Imam said, never marry a convert, because they will destroy your family. And here's Sister Catherine sitting there, a convert, and she started crying. When she went home to their friend's house, and the friend and them were having dinner, and she was talking about this, they said, I think it's better for you to go and speak to the Imam. So she went the next day, she called me and said, go and speak to the Imam. She went to the Imam, and the Imam came to tears. And he said, I'm so sorry, I'm speaking through how I see things, not how our community is. And so it may be a misstatement or a slip of the tongue. I ask Allah for forgiveness if I've ever done that. But our Islam isn't that mean. That Allah is saying, if you're ungrateful, I'm going to punish you. Allah said, if this world was valued in the eyes of Allah, janaha ba'ullah, the wing of a mosquito, anyone who disbelieved in Allah, He wouldn't give them a drop of water. But He doesn't care about this world because it has no value in His eyes. So never perceive that if something wrong is happening to you, it's a result of some ungratefulness that you had perpetrated in your life, that Allah is now punishing you for that. Allah doesn't punish. He is Arhamur Rahimin. His rahmah comes first. You're seeking His rahmah, you will get His rahmah. When you slip, He will pick you up. When you fall, He will be there to catch you. Don't ever think Allah's punishing you. Allah is just strengthening you for the next phase. We need to take that terminology away. It just hurts me in my core. It's not correct. I'm sorry.
good news and bad news. Okay, the good news is that we have come a long way. I remember 25 years ago when I was studying psychology, a lot of the shuk actually were talking me out of it. They said, this is common sense. Why in the world would you want to get a degree in psychology? My parents tried to talk me out of it. The society tried to talk me out of it. They thought that this is not something that is needed. Now, we have come a long way. 20 years now, we see that, mashallah, massages are doing conferences on mental health. We're having shuk emphasize the necessity of seeking professional help. I've had Sheikh Abdullah Surjaitan at Alam Institute for the past 4 years asked me to create a curriculum training the imams on counseling, because they are, I'm sure that is the first hat you wear. You learn about hadith, the Quran, and tafsir, and everyone who comes to you for marriage problems, right? Or if they have problems with parenting. So we've come a long way. The bad news, well, it's not necessarily bad news, but we still have a long way to go. We're still not where we need to be. We still have a lot of misconception. There's still a lot of just not enough awareness and not enough education. So I think that when people make statements, it just comes from ignorance. And obviously, the more grateful you are just going to feel more content. So that comes from even a psychological perspective. You feel more happy and more content, and that will definitely improve your mental mindset. However, if you are ungrateful and you feel that sadness, it's not necessarily something that you're going to be punished for. Inshallah, that we can get to a point where our imams and our massages are really enforcing the mental health like we're seeing them.
I think both panelists have answered that question. I just want to share with you guys that statement sounded like what is called black and white thinking. If you are this, then you must be this. And the balance is missing. And I think the person who asked the question knew in their heart. So I'm really glad that Imam Azhar and Ali addressed it.
For our third question, how do I respond to someone who used to be my close friend, but is now telling others that I am a terrible person, despite apologizing for what I said?
So the counselor hat fell off on the way here. I don't know where it is.
So I want to make sure that I understand the question. It's a friend who is now saying negative things.
It's a friend that is angry about what has been said about them, but the person has already apologized. So he or she is asking,
So
what should I do?
So the friend has apologized to them?
Yes.
So I think that one of the biggest virtues of Islam is forgiveness. And a lot of times you will find yourself in a position as teenagers where you will want to retaliate. When somebody says something, it's that angst that comes up for you when you feel like justice hasn't been served or unfairness happens. And it's very hard to do, but I'm putting it out there for you to think about. Walking away from unnecessary conflict is the graceful thing to do, because it doesn't serve a purpose. Somebody very wise in the faith had told me once that what doesn't strengthen a relationship needs to stay in your mind and die there. Because negative thoughts really don't get us somewhere, and they just lead us in a tornado that is going downward. So this is just a small test of bigger things you will have to let go of. And it's very hard. So my recommendation would be for you to consider letting go.
Another important aspect is having maturity. What I find is missing in a lot of relationships, and it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're a teenager, you're in their 20s, and it carries on to the 40s and 50s, that there's a lack of maturity. And if we don't have maturity in our relationship, we can really it can really boggle us down. So what I would recommend to a person who has experienced this, and talking from personal experience and dealing with hundreds of people who have gone through these kind of challenges, is being the bigger person. You know, you can talk and you can snap back and you can say what's on your mind, and that might give you a temporary satisfaction. I used to have a friend who would tell me, I need to get everything off my chest. I gotta just say it, and I have to let someone have it. And that 3 minutes, 5 minutes of satisfaction would lead to 5-6 months of problems. So when we are mature enough to reflect on our actions, when we are focused on self-improvement and self-growth and spiritual growth, then these kind of things we just see as trivial and we rise above it. We just rise above it. There will be people who will say things bad against you, and you know what? We should thank them because we are getting free edu, right? We are getting rewarded without the effort. So just try to have that maturity, rise above it, and see how you can be the bigger person.
Just to add to that, because mashallah, very good points were presented. I was once told, and I asked for forgiveness if I'm wrong with this, but like this 10% of what you say and 90% of how you respond to it. In life, you all are mashallah teens, you have your whole life in front of you. A humble word of advice if you can take it. When you have a friend, don't tell them everything, because tomorrow when they turn on you, they can use it against you. And when you are in a bad spot with someone, don't burn those bridges with them, because tomorrow you might have to cross that bridge. So our relationship balance is such where we have friendship, but those friendships are defined by how we uphold that respect. And I'll end by saying this very simple thing, and that is when you are agitated, something's aggravating you, something's bothering you, before you put your fingers to the phone, put your hands up and say Allah. And let me tell you something. I know it's like you are telling us to pray. Let me tell you something. Just start Surah and tell everything to Allah. Say Surah Fatiha and tell everything to Allah. Allah, you don't know what just happened. Allah, you know what she said? Do you know what he said behind my back? Tell Allah. But don't go all out because your parents might think something's going wrong. So you're like, there's a deep prayer going on here, right? There's a deep connection. You know, we see Sufis do that. That's amazing. You know, just keep it legit. Tell Allah. And you know why? Because Allah will not tell your secret to anyone. Tell Allah. You know why? Because He's not going to tell your secret to anyone. Spit it out to Allah, and Allah will not allow anyone to know.
Okay, quickly before we continue, please, although I know they say amazing things and it's funny and stuff, please, while they're talking, please keep the talking to a minimum. Even whispers, everyone's whispering, it sounds like everyone's talking loud. So please keep it down. Let's have respect for our speakers, and inshallah the process will be a lot better. Okay, these questions are ones that a lot of them are coming in, so I would, if you guys can, take as much time as you want with this. My parents know I am going through problems, and they have spoken to my counselor, but still don't really believe me. How can I convince them? Or how do I talk to them?
I see this all the time. I see this all the time, and it is really unfortunate when the parents are not as informed. And you know, we can't judge them because it's not that they just lack the understanding, maybe they lack the education, they may not have been validated when they have these kind of emotions, right? So what you have to do is basically seek that help. You said that they say they sought the help and they went to a counselor, but the parents are still not aware. Okay. You need to find a support group, people that will understand and give you the support that you need. Because sometimes, our parents, they do as good as they possibly can. I always talk to the clients who have been, maybe they've been abused, maybe they've been neglected, and there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of frustration, there is a lot of sometimes anger. Some people come in, they hate their parents. And what I tell them is that no one sets out to mess up their kids. No one intentionally wants to destroy their self-esteem or make them have these bad childhoods. But each person does as the best of their ability. And I have seen people transform. Once they get that, once they realize that they are operating with all that they have. Right? And an analogy I always use, and it really helps out, is that let's say you're starving. You are starving, and there are two individuals. One has a buffet of food, and you go up to them and you say, "Can I please have something to eat?" They're like, "No, I'm not sharing my food with you. I'm not giving you this." Versus you go to another person who has absolutely nothing, and you ask them for the food, and how are you going to feel in comparison? For the one who has it and doesn't give it, there's a lot of resentment, there's anger, there's like, you're selfish, you're greedy, why are you like this? But for the person who doesn't even have it, you're not going to be mad at them. You're going to be like, well, they just don't have it. And so there are a lot of people who may be emotionally illiterate. They really just don't know any better. And understanding that just really helps you to accept the other. Okay? So you need to find support outside sometimes of your family. Maybe seek the attention, maybe get the counseling, maybe find groups that can help you, because it's going to take some time for that generation to change their way of thinking.
This is a very common issue, and it happens a lot more. And I'm wondering if those of you who asked this question have immigrant parents. A lot of the times, parents who were not born and raised here, their level of knowledge and information about mental health is very limited. So I'm going to tell you something scientific that happens. When you go tell your kid, your parents, I have a problem. The brain has two parts of it. One is your prefrontal cortex, your smart brain, gives you critical thinking, everything that you need to do to make decisions. Well, there's a very interesting part of the brain that has helped the human race survive, and that's your limbic system, the amygdala. It's at the back of your brain. When we are triggered or fear, a very interesting thing happens in your brain. Your critical thinking stops getting